Every Christmas I think about my Grandpa Harold. He was the one person in my family who always made me feel like I truly mattered. Growing up in a small town outside Houston, Texas, he taught me everything about hard work and honesty. He built his construction company from nothing, and he always told me he would take care of my future. But there were things happening in my family that I never suspected. Until that Christmas dinner, when one simple question from him shattered everything I believed. Before we dive into this story, let me know in the comments where you are watching from today. If you have ever been betrayed by someone you trusted completely, hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. Now stay with me until the end, because what happened next changed my life forever. My name is Caden, and I grew up in a quiet little suburb about 45 minutes outside of Houston. It was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone, where kids rode their bikes until the streetlights came on, and where Sunday dinners meant something. My family was not rich, but we were comfortable. My father, George, worked as a regional manager for an insurance company. My mother, Patricia, stayed home to raise me and my younger sister, Leah, who was 4 years younger than me. But the person who shaped me the most was not my father or my mother. It was my Grandpa Harold. Grandpa Harold was a self-made man in the truest sense of the word. He grew up dirt poor in a small town in East Texas, the son of a farmer who lost everything during a bad drought. By the time he was 18, he had nothing but the clothes on his back and a stubborn refusal to accept defeat. He started working construction jobs, learned every trade he could get his hands on, and by the time he was 35, he owned his own construction company. It was never a huge operation, but it was successful. He built homes, small commercial buildings, and a reputation for honesty that money could not buy. When I was a kid, I spent more time with Grandpa Harold than with anyone else in my family. My grandmother passed away when I was 12, and after that, Grandpa lived alone in his big house on the edge of town. Most weekends, my parents would drop me off there, and I would spend hours in his garage learning how to fix engines, build shelves, and work with my hands. He taught me how to change the oil in a car before I was 10 years old. He showed me how to measure twice and cut once. He told me stories about his early days, about sleeping in his truck because he could not afford rent, about eating nothing but beans and rice for months at a time. But more than the practical skills, Grandpa Harold taught me about character. He used to say that a man is only as good as his word, and that once you break your word, you break something inside yourself that can never be fully repaired. He told me that hard work was not just about making money. It was about building something you could be proud of. He said that integrity was the one thing no one could ever take from you unless you gave it away yourself. And he always made me feel special. Out of all his grandchildren, I was the oldest. Leah came 4 years after me, and my cousins on my mother's side lived far away and rarely visited. But even beyond that, Grandpa Harold and I had a connection that went deeper than blood. He used to look at me with this proud smile and say, "Caden, you are the one who reminds me most of myself when I was young. You have got that fire in you. Do not ever let anyone put it out." I believed him. I believed every word. The relationship between my grandfather and my father was different. It was always polite, always cordial, but there was a distance there that I could never quite understand as a child. My father was not a bad man. He provided for our family, showed up to my baseball games, helped me with my homework. But there was something about the way he acted around Grandpa Harold that felt off. He was always trying to impress him, always seeking approval that never quite came. And Grandpa Harold, for his part, treated my father with respect, but never with the same warmth he showed me. I did not understand it then. I understand it now. When I was 22 years old, I graduated from college with a degree in mechanical engineering. It had been a long road. I worked part-time jobs all through school, took out student loans, and spent countless nights studying instead of partying. But I made it. And on the day I graduated, Grandpa Harold was there in the audience, clapping louder than anyone else. A few weeks later, he called me and asked me to come over to his house. When I arrived, he was sitting in his favorite armchair in the living room, a cup of coffee in his hand and a serious look on his face. He told me to sit down because he had something important to discuss. "Caden," he said, "I am getting old. I am 78 years old, and I am not going to be around forever. I have been thinking a lot about the future, about what I want to leave behind, and I have made a decision." He reached over to the side table and picked up a folder. Inside were photographs of a house. It was a beautiful little place, a single-story home with 3 bedrooms, a nice backyard, and a 2-car garage. It was located in a neighborhood that was just starting to develop the kind of area where property values were going up every year. "I bought this house for you," he said. "It is yours. I want you to have a foundation to build your life on, just like I had to build mine from nothing. But I did not have anyone to help me, and I want to help you." I could not believe what I was hearing. The house was worth at least $250,000. It was more than I could ever have saved on my own, especially with my student loans. "But there is a condition," he continued. "I am not going to put it in your name just yet. You are young, and I want you to have a few more years to mature before you take on the responsibility of owning property. When you turn 25, the house will be officially transferred to you. Until then, I am going to give the paperwork to your father for safekeeping. He will hold on to everything and make sure the transfer happens when the time comes." I asked him why he did not just hold on to the paperwork himself. He sighed and admitted that his memory was not what it used to be. He was starting to forget things, misplaced documents, and he did not trust himself to keep track of something so important. My father, he said, would make sure everything was handled properly. I thanked him more times than I could count. I hugged him and told him I would never forget what he had done for me. I promised him that I would work hard, that I would make him proud, that I would honor the gift he had given me. He just smiled and said, "I know you will, Caden. I have always known." The next 3 years of my life were filled with hard work and anticipation. I got a job at an engineering firm about an hour from my hometown. The pay was decent, not great, but enough to rent a small apartment and start paying off my student loans. I lived frugally, saving every dollar I could, knowing that when I turned 25, I would have a house of my own. Every few months I would ask my parents about the paperwork. My father always gave me vague answers. He said that Grandpa Harold was still working out some details with the property taxes. He said there were some legal issues that needed to be sorted out. He said not to worry, that everything was being taken care of. I trusted him. Why would I not trust my own father? But looking back, there were signs that something was wrong. Signs that I chose to ignore because I did not want to believe the alternative. The first sign was my sister, Leah. About a year after Grandpa Harold told me about the house, Leah started living a lifestyle that did not match her income. She had a job as an administrative assistant at a small company, making maybe $35,000 a year. But suddenly, she was driving a brand new car. She was wearing designer clothes. She was taking vacations to places like Miami and Los Angeles, posting pictures on social media that made it look like she was living the dream. I asked my parents about it once, and my mother just laughed and said that Leah was good with money. She said Leah had learned how to budget and save. I accepted the explanation, even though it did not make sense. The second sign was my parents themselves. They renovated their kitchen that year, a project that must have cost at least $40,000. They bought new furniture for the living room. My father started talking about retiring early, something he had never mentioned before. I told myself they must have gotten a raise or made some good investments. I told myself there was a reasonable explanation. I was wrong. My 25th birthday arrived on a cold day in February. I drove to my parents' house expecting something special. Not a big party, but at least some acknowledgement that this was the day I had been waiting for. The day I would finally receive the house that Grandpa Harold had promised me. My mother had made dinner. My father was there, along with Leah. We ate together, talked about nothing in particular, and when the cake came out, everyone sang happy birthday. But nobody mentioned the house. Nobody mentioned Grandpa Harold. Nobody mentioned anything about property transfers or legal documents. After dinner, I pulled my father aside. I tried to keep my voice casual, but my heart was pounding in my chest. So I said about the house, Grandpa said the paperwork would be transferred to me when I turned 25. Is everything ready? My father's face went through a series of expressions that I will never forget. First, there was surprise, then discomfort, then something that looked almost like guilt. He cleared his throat and said that Grandpa had been having memory problems lately. He said that Grandpa might have gotten confused about the details. He said he would look into it and get back to me. But what about the documents? I pressed. He gave them to you 3 years ago. You were supposed to be holding on to them for me. My father put his hand on my shoulder and told me not to worry. He said he would talk to Grandpa and figure out what was going on. He said everything would be fine, but I could see it in his eyes. Something was wrong. Before I could ask any more questions, my mother appeared with more cake and insisted that we all take pictures together. The moment passed, and I did not have the courage to bring it up again. 2 months later, I called my father again. He did not answer. I left a message and he did not call back. I tried calling my mother and she said that these things take time, that legal matters are complicated, that I should be patient. I tried to be patient. I tried to believe that my family would not lie to me. Then Thanksgiving came. We gathered at my parents' house like we always did. Grandpa Harold was there looking older and more frail than I had ever seen him. His hair had gone completely white, and he walked with a cane now. But his eyes were still sharp, still full of that intelligence and warmth that I had always loved. Halfway through dinner, he turned to me and asked a question that made my blood run cold. "Caden," he said, "how are you liking the house? Have you settled in yet?" I stared at him, not knowing what to say. I told him that I had not moved into any house. I told him that I was still living in my apartment. His forehead creased in confusion. He said he did not understand. He said he had given all the paperwork to my father 3 years ago. He said everything should have been transferred by now. Before I could respond, my father jumped in. He laughed nervously and said that Grandpa was confused again. He said that they had talked about this before. He said he would explain everything later. Grandpa Harold looked at my father for a long moment, then looked at me. Something flickered in his eyes, something that might have been doubt or suspicion. But he was tired, and the conversation moved on, and I did not have the chance to ask any more questions. But the seed of doubt had been planted, and it would not stop growing. 1 week before Christmas, I ran into someone at the grocery store. Her name was Dorothy, an old friend of my grandmother who had known our family for decades. She recognized me immediately and came over to say hello. We made small talk for a few minutes, and then she said something that changed everything. "I was so happy to hear about your sister," she said. "That house she bought is just beautiful. I drove past it the other day. You must be so proud of her." I asked her what she was talking about. "What house?" Dorothy looked surprised. She said she thought I knew. She said Leah had bought a house in that nice new development on the east side of town. A lovely, single-story place with 3 bedrooms and a big backyard. My heart stopped. I asked her to describe the house in more detail. She did. Every detail matched the photographs Grandpa Harold had shown me 3 years earlier. I do not remember how I got home that night. I do not remember parking my car or walking into my apartment. All I remember is sitting at my computer searching the public property records for the county. It did not take long to find what I was looking for. The house that Grandpa Harold had bought for me had been transferred to my sister Leah 2 years ago. The sale price listed on the deed was $1. The seller was Harold Thompson, my grandfather. But my grandfather had not sold the house to Leah. He did not even know she had it. Someone had forged documents or manipulated him into signing something he did not understand. My father, my mother, maybe both of them together. They had stolen my house and given it to my sister. I sat in my apartment that night staring at the wall, feeling like the ground had been ripped out from under me. It was not about the money. It was not even about the house. It was about the betrayal. It was about the realization that the people I had trusted most in the world had been lying to me for years. Everything I thought I knew about my family was a lie. Christmas dinner was held at my parents' house just like every year. The tree was decorated with the same ornaments we had used since I was a child. The same Christmas music played in the background. The same smells of turkey and stuffing filled the air. But nothing was the same. Not anymore. I arrived early and helped my mother set the table, acting like nothing was wrong. When Grandpa Harold arrived, I helped him out of his car and walked him slowly into the house. He squeezed my arm and told me how happy he was to see me. I told him I was happy to see him, too. We all sat down to eat. My father carved the turkey. My mother passed around the side dishes. Leah talked about her plans for New Year's Eve, some party she was going to with her friends. Everything seemed normal. Everything seemed fine. Then Grandpa Harold put down his fork and looked at me. "Caden," he said, "I've been meaning to ask you, how do you like the house I bought for you? Have you done anything with that backyard yet? I always thought it would be perfect for a garden." The table went silent. I looked at my grandfather, then at my father, then at my sister. I could have lied. I could have played along, pretended everything was fine, kept the peace for one more holiday. But I was tired of lies. I was tired of being the one who was kept in the dark. "Grandpa," I said, "what house are you talking about? I never received any house." My grandfather's face changed. The confusion was gone, replaced by something sharper, something harder. "What do you mean?" he said. "I gave all the paperwork to your father 3 years ago. I told him to transfer everything to you when you turned 25. That was months ago." My father started to speak, started to say something about confusion and misunderstandings, but Grandpa Harold held up his hand and silenced him. "George," he said, and his voice was like ice. "I am going to ask you one question, and I want a straight answer. Where is the deed to that house?" My father's face went pale. My mother looked down at her plate. Leah started crying, which told me everything I needed to know. "There was a misunderstanding," my father stammered. "Leah needed a place to live more than Caden did. He has a good job, he can take care of himself. Leah is younger, she needed help getting started. We thought you would understand." Grandpa Harold stood up so fast that his chair fell backward and crashed to the floor. His face was red and his hands were shaking, but not from weakness, from rage. "You thought I would understand," he said. "I gave that house to Caden. That was my decision to make, not yours. You had no right to change anything. You had no right to steal from your own son." "We did not steal anything," my mother said desperately. "We just redirected the gift to someone who needed it more. Caden is doing fine. He does not need help like Leah does." I stood up then. I had been silent long enough. I looked at my parents, at the people who had raised me, and I felt something shift inside my chest. The anger was there, burning hot and bright, but beneath it was something colder, something that felt like acceptance. "I understand now," I said. My voice was calm, much calmer than I felt. "I understand why I always felt like I had to work twice as hard to get half the recognition in this family. I understand why Leah always seemed to get whatever she wanted while I had to earn everything. I understand why you could never quite look me in the eye when I asked about the house." I reached down and unclasped the watch from my wrist. It was a birthday gift from my father given to me on my 21st birthday. I had worn it every day for 4 years. I set it down on the table. "I do not need anything from you," I said. "Not your gifts, not your approval, not your love that comes with conditions and asterisks. I am done." I turned to my grandfather and my voice softened. "Grandpa," I said, "I do not need the house. I never needed the house. What I needed was to know the truth, and now I know it. Thank you for loving me. Thank you for believing in me. That is worth more than any property." I walked toward the door. "Caden, wait," my mother called out. "You cannot just leave. It is Christmas." I stopped at the door and looked back at her. "You're right," I said. "It is Christmas, and this is my gift to myself. Freedom." I walked out into the cold December night and did not look back. Behind me, I could hear Grandpa Harold's voice loud and furious. I heard him say that he was changing his will. I heard him say that George and Patricia would not receive a single penny from his estate. I heard my father trying to argue, trying to explain, trying to salvage something from the wreckage. But I did not stay to listen. I got in my car and drove away. The weeks after Christmas were some of the hardest of my life. I did not miss the house. I did not even miss the money. What I missed was the family I thought I had, the parents I thought loved me unconditionally, the sister I thought looked up to me. I did not answer their calls. I did not respond to their texts. My mother sent long emails explaining why they did what they did, how it was all for the best, how I was overreacting. My father sent shorter messages asking me to call him, saying we needed to talk like adults. Leah sent nothing at all. But Grandpa Harold called me 3 days after Christmas, and I answered. His voice was tired but firm. He apologized for what had happened. He said he should have handled the paperwork himself instead of trusting my father. He said he should have checked in more often to make sure everything was being done properly. I told him it was not his fault. He was betrayed too. We both were. Over the next few months, I visited Grandpa Harold more than I ever had before. Every Sunday afternoon, I would drive to his house and spend a few hours with him. We would sit on his porch and talk about life, about regrets, about the things that really matter. He told me about times in his own life when he had been betrayed. A business partner who stole from him in the early days. A friend who spread lies about him to win a contract. He said that every man faces moments like these moments that test his character and reveal who he really is. Do not let this make you bitter, he told me one afternoon. They have lost you, Caden. That is their punishment. They will have to live with that for the rest of their lives. But if you let hatred consume you, then they win twice. Once when they took the house, and once when they took your peace of mind. I took his words to heart. I did not forgive my parents, not exactly, but I stopped being angry. I stopped replaying the confrontation in my mind. I stopped imagining all the things I could have said or done differently. I focused on my work. I earned a promotion that spring. I started saving money with a new purpose, not for a house that someone else gave me, but for a future that I would build with my own 2 hands. I made new friends, people who appreciated me for who I was, not for what I could give them or what I represented. And slowly, day by day, I began to heal. Grandpa Harold passed away in October of the following year. He went peacefully in his sleep in the house he had built with his own hands 50 years earlier. I was by his side the night before, holding his hand, telling him how much he meant to me. The reading of his will was 2 weeks later. True to his word, he had removed my parents from his estate entirely. The bulk of his assets went to various charities he had supported throughout his life. His house was left to me, along with a letter that I still keep in my desk drawer. In that letter, he wrote that he was proud of me. He wrote that I had shown more integrity in one night than my father had shown in a lifetime. He wrote that the greatest inheritance he could leave me was not money or property, but the knowledge that I was capable of standing up for myself, of walking away from toxicity, of building a life based on truth rather than convenience. I did not feel joy when I inherited his house. I felt gratitude. Gratitude that I had known him. Gratitude that he had believed in me when others did not. Gratitude that he had given me the one thing I truly needed permission to choose my own family. My parents tried to contact me after the funeral. They tried to challenge the will. They tried to convince me to share the inheritance with them, arguing that blood is thicker than water, that family should stick together. I did not respond. Not out of anger. Not out of revenge. Simply because I had nothing left to say to them. They had made their choices and I had made mine. There was nothing more to discuss. Today, I live in Grandpa Harold's old house. I have renovated some of it, updated the kitchen, added a workshop in the garage where I build furniture in my spare time. I have planted a garden in the backyard, just like he always wanted. Sometimes I think about what would have happened if Grandpa Harold had not asked that question at Christmas dinner. Maybe I would have gone years without knowing the truth. Maybe I would have kept trusting people who did not deserve my trust. Maybe I would have spent my whole life chasing approval from people who were never going to give it. But he did ask, and everything changed. The house that was stolen from me was worth $250,000. But the lesson I learned that Christmas is worth more than any amount of money. I learned that family is not defined by blood. I learned that integrity cannot be inherited. It must be chosen over and over again every single day. I learned that walking away from people who hurt you is not weakness. It is strength. And I learned that sometimes losing something you thought you needed is the only way to find out what you truly deserve. So if you are out there watching this, and you are dealing with a family that does not value you, a situation where you are being taken advantage of people who make you feel like you are never quite good enough, I want you to know something. You are enough. You have always been enough. And the people who cannot see that do not deserve a place in your life. Build your own foundation. Create your own family. Define your own worth. That is the real inheritance. If this story touched your heart, I would love to hear from you. Have you ever discovered a painful truth about someone you trusted? How did you handle it? Drop your answer in the comments below. And if you found value in this story, please hit that like button, subscribe to this channel, and share this video with someone who might need to hear it today. Thank you for spending this time with me. I hope wherever you are, you find the strength to stand up for yourself and the peace that comes from knowing your own worth. Take care of yourself. And remember, the best things in life are the ones you build with your own hands.